Do you want to know why kids lie and how to stop it? I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach parenting, communication, self-government, and I've actually recovered from lying myself, so I can teach this with absolute confidence. In this video, I'm going to be talking about why kids choose to tell lies. Why do they want to deceive us when we could just talk about things instead? Well, there are reasons behind their actions. And then we'll talk about how we can stop this lying habit before it turns into a lie monster. I did treatment foster care for a lot of years for youth ages 12 to 18, and many of those children that came to my home, in fact, the majority of them struggled with honesty issues. So on their files, it would say stuff like honesty problems or habit of lying or kleptomania or compulsive lying. So there was a lot of honesty problems that they were dealing with. And I actually chose those children to come to my home for treatment because I did treatment care on purpose, because I knew that that was a behavior nobody liked to deal with because it's hard to help a person who lies. And I knew that I had overcome it, so I knew what to watch for. Now I got to tell you a little funny story. So there was one foster daughter that came to my home, and she was a compulsive liar, absolutely. And the state had mandated that she do therapy. And so she went to therapy for 6 months with this therapist. And I kept saying, I need to come in and talk to you. She's got honesty issues. We need to make sure we're checking everything, you know. But the therapist was like, no. We're having such a great therapy sessions. It's going to be fine. So I finally went in to meet with the therapist. It had been 6 months of therapy visits. And the therapist started telling me things like, oh, so-and-so tells me she's taking dance lessons. And, you know, and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, oh, she's not. She's like, she's not? I said, no. She doesn't take dance lessons. Okay, well, that's interesting. She writes it down. Well, so-and-so tells me that she's been having this contact with her brother and she's been doing, and I'm like, she hasn't. And so it was thing after thing after thing. The therapist finally said, are you trying to tell me that for 6 months I have been writing down notes on lies and she's just been coming in here and lying to me every single time and building on the lie? And I'm like, it does look like that. So we need to definitely talk every time after she meets so that you can make sure you've got the full truth. Well, this therapist was like, you know what? I don't think I can help her. And she actually said she's going to have to switch therapists because she was so hurt by the fact that she did not detect the lies after all of that period of time. Well, this child was a very proficient liar. And I knew it, but I was able to help her. And I was so happy about that. It took us a lot of time. She was with us for a year, but at the end of that time, she really was able to communicate honestly the majority of the time. I'm going to say majority because her lying really did come from a history of abuse. And every once in a while, she would still try to revert to it. Those habits are very hard to break. So why did this foster child lie? She had no reason to lie to a therapist. The person was just there to help her. And why do other children lie too? Maybe children that it's not as intense. Maybe they're not a compulsive liar, but they just tell lies. Let's talk about that, and then we'll get to what we can do about it. So for this particular foster daughter, she lied because it was a habit. She honestly didn't even keep track of when she was lying versus telling the truth. It was habitual. She had gotten into it. She liked to tell a story. She liked to grandiose, to make herself seem better. She had low self-confidence, and so she was always trying to say how cool she was or what she got, something that was special, so that she could try to make herself and other people think that her life was slightly better than it was. So it was almost her way of trying to improve her own outlook on life. I remember when she came to my home, she said, oh, this is really special shampoo. You know, I paid a lot of money for it, you know, and I looked at the shampoo and it was like Suave. And she's like, you see how swirly it is. It's very special. And I'm like, okay, so that is 2 shampoos mixed together. You probably squished another one in. I hope it was your own and that you did not steal that shampoo from somebody else at your last group home placement. And she was like, oh. but she was trying to make it sound cool. And she's like, I have this special chocolate. I just save it because I love dark chocolate so much. And she showed it to me, and it was baking cocoa. Baking chocolate squares wrapped in the gold, but without the outer wrapping. And I was like, oh, that is really special. And I wouldn't eat it either because it's really bitter. That's baking chocolate. Did you take it from your last placement? And she was like, no, they gave it to me. And I knew that they didn't give it to her. So we had to actually go through a thing where she apologized for taking that. We did find out she stole somebody's shampoo too. This was on the first day in my home. So this child was trying to make her life sound special and good because she had been so abused and so beat up. And sometimes when a person feels so low, they make a false reality for themselves so that they can feel a little bit better. And she was definitely in the habit of doing that. So why do other children lie? So I lied for different reasons. I mean, maybe a little bit that I wanted to seek attention like that foster child did. I wanted to seem cool sometimes, and that was probably some of the reason I lied. But there were other things too, like I just didn't want to do everything. I was a little bit lazy. I didn't want to have to finish the chore or put in the time. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. So I would sneak around and tell my parents I did things that I really didn't do. I didn't want to spend my time doing homework, especially because the schoolwork was easy for me. So instead, I would just say, oh, I left it in my locker, and then I would go and fill it out at lunch and turn it in later. Those were just things that seemed to serve me well. Sometimes a child or a person just wants to have more control over their own life. They feel micromanaged. So they start telling lies so that they can have a little bit more freedom. So if we're going to help them, we've got to remember that they're craving freedom and remember craving attention. Another reason that people lie is because they actually want to manipulate another person or control another person. This is another thing. Now, this is when we're trending a little bit toward narcissistic behaviors, but this is becoming more and more popular all the time. In fact, young people are controlling each other. Just the other day, there was a young person who I saw try to control a whole group of adults and other youth. And she did this by professing a lie. So she went counter to what the other people in the group were saying. She was oppositional. To maintain that opposition and that control, she had to say the opposite of what everybody said. So she made up a lie and made it sound like it was true. But the problem was everybody that was in the group knew that that didn't quite rub them the right way. So how do we help people who are searching for more control of their surroundings, attention, and maybe feeding their laziness or wanting a little bit more freedom? Well, we've got to teach them how to control the impulse to lie and what they can do instead to handle their problems. Before I get to how to control the impulses and what we can teach the children so they don't feel like they need a lie anymore, hit that subscribe button. There are multiple videos about dishonesty, but also about self-control. They are going to be so helpful to you as you are teaching your child to master themselves and to overcome those cravings to do things that are destructive for their relationships, like lying. Subscribe now. When I was 14 years old, I finally decided I had had enough with my own lying. This is the thing, as a liar, even though they get something out of the lies, they don't necessarily like the lies. I hated the lies. I felt like I was trapped by all of these lies, but I didn't know any other way to get out of them. And once you share one lie, you have to remember it forever. This is a huge burden, right? So there's a point where a person has to decide, I'm done with this. I want to come completely clean. So this is what I did, and I decided I needed a skill set for myself. This skill set was called controlling the impulse to lie, and I made it up. Basically, it went like this. Recognize that you want to say something, stop yourself, ask yourself a question. The question is this the truth? If the answer is yes, then take a little step forward and say exactly what the truth is. But if the answer is no, then turn and walk away. do not share what it is. Or if someone has asked you a question, turning and walking away could be disrespectful. So instead, what you do is you say, right now, I am tempted to say something that is not true. I need a minute to make sure that I tell you the exact truth. Then they know that you are focusing on giving them the full truth. And you know what? They will not think bad of you because of that. They will honor you for it. So then you say the exact truth. So that's what I taught myself to do as a 14-year-old so that I can improve relationships with my family members, with my friends, and with my teachers at school, because I realized I had made false relationships with all of them through my lying. So you see, you can deliberately decide ahead of time how you want to communicate. And when you're working with a child who has a problem with lying, you can teach them skill development ahead of time. So that skill that I developed, controlling the impulse to lie, is really one of the what to do's that you want to remember. But also there is a skill called accepting a no answer. So anytime there is a boundary line that you don't cross over, such as touching someone who doesn't want to be touched or doing something you shouldn't do, then those are all no answers. Well, telling a lie is a boundary line you shouldn't cross over. Saying something that is not true, so that's a line you don't cross, that is also a no answer. So there are 4 steps to accepting a no answer that I teach in my children's book for children, Porter Earns a Quarter, that teaches the skill accepting a no answer and criticism. I also teach this skill, as well as many others that are useful for parents and children, in my Teaching Self-Government parenting course on my website, teachingselfgovernment.com. So the steps for this skill are: you look at the person or the situation, you keep a calm face, voice, and body, then you say okay to whatever that boundary line is. So if it's no lie, I'm not going to lie, then you say, okay, I'm not going to lie. Or you disagree appropriately, which in the lying situation probably doesn't really apply, but then you drop the subject. I think I held up 5 fingers, but it's really 4 steps. So the 3rd step is say okay or disagree appropriately. And the final step is drop the subject, which means you do not think about telling that lie anymore. You move your brain on to something else. That is very helpful. In fact, if people who have a habit or a craving to lie can learn, they can control how their brain moves through information. That is incredibly liberating. Teach them that they can sing a song to change their brain so that they're not thinking about it anymore. Teach them that they can recite a poem that would be uplifting or remind them to be honest. There are so many things that they can do to drop the subject and stop thinking about that lie that they want to tell. So that skill set is also very, very helpful. Now, in my family, if a person does choose to lie, then there is a way that we correct them. So there is a correction process that I go through that is a very calm but firm process so that they are corrected for not accepting a no answer. I don't have time to talk about that in this video, but I do talk about it in a class that I am offering on this channel for free. The class is called The Expectation Trap versus the Cycle for Success. So go to that class right now, click on the link to that video, and you will get more information not only about how to have happier, more united days, but how to correct some of those problems like lying and what types of consequences you might want to be using in those circumstances. So click on The Expectation Trap versus the Cycle for Success now. I'll see you there.